But we struck a deal with Floyd Mayweather to develop his digital likeness, to give him the ability to evaluate and explore what championship boxing might look like in a fully simulated environment in front of live audiences with global pay-per-view, where the only thing digital will be the boxers, in the ring. These are results which will be simulated, and Floyd Mayweather's not even going to know the result of it. We're going through the uplisting process beginning now. We expect that to go very well. FUBO is a highly sought after company by the exchanges. And as a NASDAQ listed company with these kinds of metrics, with the valuation that we're talking about, which is a considerable discount to where the peers are, we feel very good that this is an accretive transaction to the share value. And so they grew from 117 million to 223 million as an annualized revenue run rate at the end of 2019.
So again, good afternoon. Welcome everybody to Wall Street Reporter's next Super Stock live stream for today, Thursday, March 26th, 2020. Today we have an exclusive presentation from FaceBank Group. The stock symbol is FBNK, of course. And the CEO of FaceBank, John Textor, made his debut presentation here just a few weeks ago. The company's had some tremendous developments since then. They just recently announced a merger with fuboTV, which is going to be a real game changer because this now puts the combined company in the streaming space, alongside players like Netflix, Roku, this is the hottest area in the market right now. Obviously, with the whole coronavirus thing, this space is getting a lot of attention. So it's an opportunity to really get in on the ground floor. For those of you who are new to Wall Street Reporter's next Super Stock live stream events, our premise is simple. We're looking for companies which have 10x upside potential. These are companies which are at key inflection points. They're going after multi-billion-dollar markets, and they have a CEO that really gets it when it comes to maximizing shareholder value. So the format for today is very simple. John is going to present for about 20 minutes. Then we're going to open it up for Q&A, and it's your Q&A that really makes these events special. So please submit your questions, watch the presentation, and then decide for yourself if FaceBank is going to be the next super stock. With that being said, please welcome CEO John Textor. John, take it away.
Great, thank you, Jack. Thank you, everyone, for being on here. I do have to say, after your preamble, Jack, companies that you get behind have CEOs that really get it. That's a nice compliment, but this company is about to have a CEO that's even much better than I am, and I'm thrilled to tell you about not only the company with which we're merging, but about the leadership that is joining and taking over the reins of our company going forward. I'll still be incredibly involved as a major shareholder, a member of the management team, and a member of the board, but we're going to learn a lot about this incredible merger, which is treated from an accounting perspective as the FaceBank acquisition. We're the accounting acquirer, but management going forward is going to be led by David Gandler of FUBO, and he's terrific, incredibly well respected, and we're going to talk about him a bit today too. So I think the last time we all talked, we talked not only about our digital human technology, how we see humans as really the constant across all evolution of media. We produced a movie a number of years ago called Tron, which is all about the user. Media is no different, whether it's traditional film or games or mixed reality, social media, personal productivity. You don't have to think too much about this. Technologies change, platforms change, but everything's about the user, everything's about the consumer. And in this new world, you're going to see humans as you interact directly and across social media and other platforms. They're not going to be made of flesh and blood. They're going to be digital, and we like to think that we're one of their creators. Now, that said, we've also talked about our business model and what we look to achieve from this. We are a character-based virtual entertainment company. Yes, we're a leader in the digital human space, and that qualifies us to not only do hyper-realistic digital humans, but also fantasy characters and other kinds of characters that drive intellectual property, traditional entertainment, sports entertainment, events, social media, personal productivity. You know, we're famous for our big kind of virtual performances, but just think about the digital humans and the characters that are driving everything from your video games to all of the new apps and the way content's changing. We're the selfie generation, and we're obsessed with our likeness and the likeness of others. And that likeness is no longer just limited to the analog or personal properties. It's a digital asset for not only celebrities, but all consumers. So we're a tech-driven content play, and we were looking for a content delivery platform that worked for our Floyd Mayweather project and potentially our Muhammad Ali project. And then we met FUBO along the way, which is their technology stack is second to none in the OTT space. They're not just helping people to see traditional content, television and sports content, entertainment, news, but it's a content delivery platform that also works very well into the future. So why did this business combination happen? Well, content's going to look very different 3 years from now than it does today. Television is hugely important in our lives, but when's the last time your 16-year-old walked into a room and said, "Hey, Dad, let me show you a clip from Modern Family"? They don't say that. They're not even digesting that the same way they do. They're binging on that kind of content, but they're interacting day to day with new form, future form content. And that's where we come in. We're creating that content of the future, one of the many players in that space, but we're probably the only one that I know, you know, in enterprise that sees not only celebrity likeness, but consumer likeness as an intellectual property play. It's a bit trippy, it's a bit futuristic, and it's a bit far off for most analysts to digest. But I think we all know that the character space, the digital human space, and generally the human space is massive. And it's the constant that sort of continues throughout all forms of media in the past, traditionally, and in the future. Now, what is Wall Street going to understand? Well, they're going to understand FUBO a lot more than they understand us. And that's really going to be the dominant part of our story going forward. And many of the really cool R&D projects that you've come to like with FaceBank, and some that you've seen, these virtual performers, those are going to be in part in the R&D kind of picture of FUBO going forward, and in specific properties like Mayweather and Muhammad Ali or ABBA or some of these other projects we're responsible for. That's going to be content that's going to add to the content that's already coming through the FUBO customers. So quick review on FaceBank so you can understand how it all ties in. And we also have some folks on this call who are really more from the FUBO, you know, audience, people that know FUBO and where they stand in the space and are wondering a lot about FaceBank and this company and why this combination made sense. So I'm going to hit a little bit on FaceBank, and then we're going to close with specifics on FUBO, and we're going to talk for the first time publicly about some of the metrics on FUBO. Our focus, as we talked about in our last meeting together, we're focused on technology, not only developing what we can along the way in the character-driven, content-driven space. We're focused on content and intellectual property. I mean, technology is important, but content has always been king, and IP lasts often much longer than does technology. And we're focused on audience. You know, you're really not all that important as a technology platform or as an app if 500 million people aren't paying attention to you. And we've got the relationships internally within our shareholder group at FaceBank. We've got celebrity relationships, strategic partner relationships we're going to talk about. We are in the hundreds of millions right now in terms of consumer reach, and that's important. And I think it's also important to FUBO, who's got their own massive audience, but I think they'll enjoy tapping into ours as well. A couple of housekeeping items. I want to make sure I draw your attention to some things that are really important to FaceBank, also important to FUBO going forward. Keep in mind, as we discussed in our 8K, many of you are hearing this for the first time, the company is going to be renamed fuboTV, and our stock symbol is conveniently available, FUBO. So it'll be FUBO once we get through that FINRA process. But in terms of things that have happened just prior to this that are important to FaceBank and FUBO going forward, this partnership with Authentic Brands Group, please take a look at that press release. It's an incredible company. They've aggregated so many brands across sports and entertainment, from Volcom and Juicy Couture and Sports Illustrated, but also character-driven properties like Muhammad Ali and Elvis Presley and Marilyn Monroe. So we reestablished in a very powerful way our relationship with our shareholder, Authentic Brands Group. And when I say later in the presentation that we have 265 million Instagram followers that by contract are now following and supporting the FaceBank brand and soon the FUBO brand, those relationships come from Authentic Brands Group. It's a $10 billion at retail revenue company with 265 million Instagram followers of all of their key brands. So it's an incredible, powerful relationship, and they're a great shareholder. One other housekeeping item, we get a lot of questions about, well, how does FaceBank stand in terms of its own access to the capital markets in a choppy market? How's it been financing and refinancing its business, accessing capital? How's it going to support those very same requirements of FUBO going forward? Well, David Gandler is an incredible executive. He's raised over $250 million in private equity for FUBO to date. So he's pretty darn good at raising capital. As far as FaceBank's concerned, we're also very credible in the capital markets. On February 17th, we announced the completion in the middle of a very, very difficult, coronavirus, market that was happening at the same time. A 50 million euro bond offering at 4.5% coupon with no equity features at all. And that was to refinance a lot of the debt that we had from an acquisition that we made in the third quarter of 2019, our company Nextway, which is for some that were on this call before, is our digital content distribution platform that gets us into so many countries. So to be able, as an OTC company, to go into the market and get 50 million euros at a 4.5% coupon, we think that's a testament to the quality of our company, our reputation for, treating our equity and debt holders well, paying them back, and so that's a really impressive thing, I think, that we were able to pull off. And we're not really your typical OTC company. I think you'd be hard pressed to find somebody in our space that would be able to sort of complete that kind of efficient transaction. A couple of reminders: what's a digital human? What's sort of the core of our technology, our character-driven technology? Well, it's really any computer-generated character that is, replicates the mechanical and behavioral and personality traits of a human being, whether it's a hyper-realistic human or a fantasy character, anywhere along that spectrum of realism. And I'm not going to dive into this in terms of the technology as we did on our last call, but it's kind of a reminder of what character-based entertainment looks like. And you've seen it before. So when I say this is a multi-billion-dollar space, the character-driven entertainment space or the AI space, I mean, these are some of the examples, from Tron to Tupac to obviously the characters of Avatar, or even game-like characters that you see all the time. Now, where have we seen them before in projects where we as principals have been involved? The hyper-realistic Oscar-winning performance of the digital alter ego of Brad Pitt, or the digital alter ego of Jeff Bridges. Those were at a predecessor company, as was the Tupac hologram. And then with our company at its creation, the very well-received digital Michael Jackson in 2014. Incredible projects and really set the standards for digital humans today. Now, where are we to see them today and tomorrow? We talk a lot about how content's changing. We're putting ourselves in the content. We're all desktop filmmakers, and we're editing, and we're finding a way to engage with content where we may borrow content, annotate content, create our own content, and we're putting ourselves into the action, either in a fan-based app like FacePaint, or one of these higher-end apps like you see of this pink character where your likeness can be put into a futuristic Android or digital alter ego. Then there's the very famous Face app, which was a few months back. People thought, well, gee, I can scan my face and see what I look like as an older person or with a beard. And before you knew it, 150 million people in 3 weeks, we understand, it scanned their faces into this app, and without knowing it, gave this little Russian company a royalty-free license in perpetuity on their likeness and all the photos in their phone. So when I talk about the selfie generation, infatuated with our likeness and that of our friends and celebrities and putting us into action, you're seeing it all around us today. Now, some of our proprietary technology, we're not going to go into a tech demo, but for those that are really new to the FaceBank story that might be coming to this presentation from kind of the FUBO interested environment, we're really at the high end. It's we build our digital humans from, the core of the human being out, from dilating pupils in the eyes, meniscus fluid, the lacrimal, caruncle, skin textures, eyelash, simulation technology, from teeth to the tendons in the neck, and tying it into the shoulder and bringing it all together with more, commercial kind of items. We can, get together with the folks at Marvelous Designer and take any clothing pattern, any potential sponsor, and we can dress our digital humans. And so we really, really have come a long way in the creation of characters, and where visual effects companies in the feature film market, may do humans pretty well. I think we've seen some failures in the market, even with Star Wars recently, with digital humans that look a little bit creepy. Well, we're a human animation and character animation specialty firm, and this is all we do, is create these characters for intellectual property. And a quick look at, one of our most impressive characters in recent history, just to show you the quality that we're bringing in this kind of content that'll come up and flow through, ultimately, the FUBO content delivery platform. We really are building, the best digital humans in the world, among the very few in the world that are capable of doing this. Now, let's start talking about some of the actionable IP that we have, that we bring into this FUBO relationship. And the one that a lot of people are talking about, we reported this somewhat quietly. We're not very promotional as an OTC company. I think some of you have complained about that, but we quietly disclosed this, in our 8K, which was a likeness agreement with Floyd Mayweather. Frankly, we like to reserve the press for the project itself when that starts to come out, and this story of this is told to the world, the boxing community and the consumer sports, viewership community. But we struck a deal with Floyd Mayweather to develop his digital likeness, to give him the ability to evaluate and explore what championship boxing might look like in a fully simulated environment in front of live audiences with global pay-per-view, where the only thing digital will be the boxers, in the ring. These are results which will be simulated, and Floyd Mayweather's not even going to know the result of it until it happens. And I think that'll be pretty interesting to see him watch himself as this ultimately happens. But Floyd Mayweather can fight Sugar Ray Leonard. He can fight, obviously he's fought Conor McGregor. That was a gimmick fight, many would think, but incredibly respected as an event, hugely successful as an entertainment property. And I think it shows you, with the hundreds of millions of dollars that came in on that event, shows you the power of Floyd Mayweather. It shows you the power of boxing as an entertainment product. And when you start thinking about Mayweather fighting Sugar Ray Leonard, or fighting Bruce Lee, we think people are going to watch this, and we think they're going to be shocked at how incredibly realistic it looks. Honestly, I think the entertainment and sports entertainment community is not going to know what hit them when ultimately this comes through. And so this is something we've been developing, and it's empowered by the fact that we're a digital human company, but it's really about an entertainment property. And this is right in the wheelhouse of, folks like FUBO. FUBO, of course, started in sports, and they've expanded to be really so much more as a, for the cord cutter environment that's looking, to come off of cable. Kung Fu Panda Spectacular Live, it's another property that we have an interest in, and that interest is growing. It is a live entertainment property that's also heavily dependent on character animation, and there are extensions of this into traditional entertainment platform delivery that I think are also going to be attractive to FUBO. So I'm just touching on a little bit of the entertainment side of what we do in our character creation business. And with our Authentic Brands Group deal with Marilyn Monroe and Elvis Presley and Muhammad Ali, everybody wants to see Muhammad Ali fight Mike Tyson. Everybody's, even Mike Tyson recently in the press talking about who might win. I think his humility was impressive, but I think we all want to see it actually go down. And that's something that we're working with Authentic Brands Group on, who not only own the rights to Muhammad Ali, but they own Sports Illustrated as well. So great partner there. What are the revenues like for likeness-based digital products? Look, we're not doing video games, and we're not Fortnite. My former CTO at a predecessor company is the current CTO of Epic Games, and they've been incredibly successful in Fortnite. But I bring this up because this is what happens when you give a game away for free. Fortnite was distributed in beta, and then people play the game, they enjoy the community of the game, and then they enjoy their character likeness and they change their avatars, and it's a new hat, a new character, young men and boys playing in female characters and vice versa. Everything is, it's a free-for-all in terms of how people are representing themselves in a virtual environment. And the in-app purchases of their likeness-based products generated $2.4 billion in revenues for Fortnite, the game, in 2018. And this was a game that was given away for free. So that revenue was all from the in-app purchases, with people playing around with their likeness and changing out their avatars and their clothing. And so when we talk about this digital human space, don't think that this is a nascent industry just starting to take hold. Look what it did for Fortnite in 2018 alone. Now, our foundation is built on our experience and our history in visual effects, our history in personalization technology for some of the companies we were involved in prior to our visual effects underpinnings, our technology, the technology that we acquired out of digital domains restructuring from Creature Arts and Mechanics Digital, and then the massive human animation portfolio we acquired from Pulse Evolution, which is really one of the breakout leaders in this human animation space. We think hundreds of millions of dollars of technology now sort of set in the direction of a really terrific and commercial purpose. Acquisitions that we've completed, I just spoke about Pulse, that incredible animation technology portfolio. And then one acquisition that doesn't get a lot of attention because it's really set up as an e-commerce distribution platform with incredible payment and merchant of record and tax remittance services that allow software companies and content companies and video game companies to distribute their software and their content around the globe. This company, Nextway, that we bought, is really set up to make a very thin margin off of enabling all of those content and software companies to get into 180 countries, to collect payments in 140 different currencies. We made this acquisition because we were looking for a way to get our Mayweather content and our globally relevant content out to the world in a very efficient way. People talk about things that go viral, that's great, but businesses need to be scalable with some good old-fashioned infrastructure. And for one business, that might be a warehouse if you're Amazon, or a series of warehouses and logistics. For a business like ours, it's sort of digital distribution infrastructure. And this, acquisition we made allows our company to be global. And that's of significant interest to FUBO, which is a US company just opening up very successfully in Spain, its first international expansion territory. And now it can look to not only the other fun sort of synergies with FaceBank and our content player, our technology, our shareholder group, our customer aggregation, which is already quite impressive, but also Nextway, which makes it very easy for FUBO to plan its continued international expansion. Intellectual property that we've aggregated, we've talked about it, Michael Jackson, virtual Mayweather, virtual ABBA, Elvis Presley, some others, and then living celebrities, all the time coming to us, who we think are an incredible gateway to consumers. The Face app that we talked about, they didn't just get 150 million consumers to sign on overnight, but when Drake, or I think it was Drake, decided to scan his face, suddenly 150 million people wanted to sign on to it. So it's, IP is really how it sort of drives from there. In terms of customer reach, we've talked about the reach we have, and I'm going to sort of fast forward past this, and I'm going to close with a discussion of FUBO. These are some of the metrics that I'd like the market to understand. You can read a lot about their company, how credible they are in the OTT space, how they came into this market largely through sports, and through sports, they've been able to grab those customer relationships, keep those people happy, and they've been expanding that loyalty beyond sports into well over half of the content enjoyment that happens on the FUBO platform is in news and entertainment and non-sports content. Their shareholder group, Disney, Viacom, AMC Networks, Goldman Sachs, Comcast, Microsoft, Discovery, you can see them up there. And it's an incredible group of people that have been assembled by and have supported David Gandler and his team. And you can see the team there from David to Alberto, Gare, and Hannah, and they're adding people by the day, especially in contemplation of now being a public company. But they're the first, really a sports first OTT platform, and they've expanded well beyond that, as we've talked about. and they're really becoming an alternative to the much more expensive, Comcast and sort of traditional, ways that we get content. In terms of recent announcements, don't take my word for it that they're an incredible technology stack, that they're, in my opinion, the best user interface within that market. They can bring together all forms of content. But, take the word of Google and Viasat. In February, early February, Google Fiber announced that they were dropping their own TV service in favor of two major players, one that they owned and one that they didn't. So fuboTV was selected to be an OTT platform to sit alongside YouTube for all the Google Fiber, the ISP customers of Google. So if that's not a, as they used to say, the good housekeeping seal of approval, I don't know what is. Google's pretty smart in the tech space. They have their own platform relationship, obviously, with YouTube, but they chose FUBO as an independent OTT player to take to their customers to strengthen their offerings. And Google is very protective of their brand name, and they only deal with quality. So that's an amazing announcement. When you think about, what Jack said at the beginning of the call as I wrap, that we're considered a part of that group of, the top OTT players like Roku. That's not us saying that. That's, folks out in Wall Street and the press. You can see the incredible amount of press that we got this last week. The peer group of Netflix and Roku and Spotify, those are research analysts and stock exchanges that are saying that. That's not us. And obviously Google is a great testament to the strength of FUBO as well. Viasat announcement came down a week later after the Google announcement. They provide, television services and streaming up to airlines. So they selected FUBO to be their OTT platform of choice for American Airlines, JetBlue, and United Airlines. So FUBO's had an incredible couple of wins. We're stepping into a space where the peer group, these guys are traded at 8 to 10 times revenues, between 2 million and 12 million shares a day in trading at stock prices of, $90 and up. That's $1 billion in trading that happens every day at Roku, and FaceBank is privileged and thrilled to be able to merge with one of those comparables in FUBO. Couple of metrics, which is very important. We're going to be also releasing these under an 8K today as we're disclosing these to you. Now, understand that the consolidation of FUBO numbers, they do not consolidate into FaceBank historical numbers until the day the merger closes. We've projected that will close the very end of the first quarter if it doesn't leak into the second quarter by a few days. So you're only going to see the inclusion of their numbers in FaceBank numbers on a going forward basis starting in the second quarter. In terms of their annual revenue run rate, they grew considerably since the fourth quarter of 2018, where their run rate was 117 million. That run rate means annualized revenues based on that monthly number or that quarterly number in the fourth quarter. And so they grew from 117 million to 223 million as an annualized revenue run rate at the end of 2019. Their subscriber count, and that's a growth of 90%. Their subscriber count was up 34% from the fourth quarter of 2018 to the fourth quarter of 2019. And this is a company that is largely driven by subscription. In 2018, there's 72 million in total revenues. Only 4.5 million of that came from advertising, and that's an important growth category for the company going forward because their ad server tech stack is just amazing. It's an opportunity for growth, but it's also something you need to think about in terms of how they're insulated in this current market, because 90% of their their revenues largely are from subscribers, and so that's a safe space right now. People are going into the home, they're streaming, they're relying on those OTT companies and those in-house streaming companies much more and more these days than they have in the past. But the company has a really nice opportunity on advertising when the market comes out of this current pandemic and we start looking at total opportunities going forward. In 2019, revenues of 147 million, up from 72 million in 2018 prior, and still the ad revenues at 11 million represents a significant future opportunity for the company. Hours per subscriber, this is my favorite metric because it shows the dependency of a FUBO subscriber on the platform. And as David has talked about many times, they get them with sports, and then they keep them with the other offerings of content and news and entertainment. So 68 hours per month was the average usage viewership of a FUBO subscriber in December 2018. That number grew 89% year over year to 129 hours per month per subscriber at FUBO in December of 2019. I can't even think about how I allocate 68 hours in a month for content. Maybe I do, but that number in and of itself is impressive. 129 hours of dependency on FUBO content by FUBO subscribers at the end of 2019, and that's quite an impressive number. So I'd like to close having delivered some key metrics to help you understand in a market that often values companies like this at 8 to 10 to, just before the pandemic crash, Roku was at 15 times revenues. Well, this transaction is happening with our roughly 35 million fully diluted shares at FaceBank. When you add up our current outstanding plus the fully diluted calc, and you look at the math of this merger, where yes, we may be the accounting acquirer with board seats and with voting interest, but the economic interest is that we're issuing preferred shares that are convertible into 2 common shares, such that the deal is 1/3 to FaceBank shareholders and 2/3 to FUBO shareholders. Against the 35 million share fully diluted kind of approximate number, that means we end up at 105 million shares post-merger, and with a revenue run rate at the end of 2019 growing very quickly from that $223 million dollar number. We're not releasing forward-looking numbers, but you can do the math. This is a merger that's happening in the 2.5 times revenue space. If you take our share price times the outstanding shares, and you start just comparing it to the FUBO numbers, and that's before you get to the significant revenue and business activity that we have at FaceBank that we've talked about. So I think we're coming into the market. We had a lot of news, and the news doesn't tie back to an OTC ticker. We know that, but we're going through the uplisting process beginning now. We expect that to go very well. FUBO is a highly sought after company by the exchanges. And as a NASDAQ listed company with these kinds of metrics, with the valuation that we're talking about, which is a considerable discount to where the peers are, we feel very good that this is an accretive transaction to the share value for FaceBank shareholders. So I'm going to wrap it up there, Jack, and thank everybody for being on the long call. We've gone 40 minutes. I'm sorry, but one heck of a transformative merger transaction, which is very fair in terms of valuation to the FaceBank shareholders, and the combination of what we're doing in content, our customer aggregation of millions of consumers, which are also going to be hearing about FUBO very quickly. We think that's a great marketing opportunity for FUBO. And then, this is probably honestly the last time that I talk to the shareholders, other than a couple of other smaller investor relations things that are happening, as the CEO of FaceBank. I expect the next time you hear from us in any kind of public setting, it's going to be David Gandler, one impressive gentleman. I've honestly never seen somebody that's so strong on the metrics and still so good at selling the vision of not only his company, but what the future of content looks like. And the people at FUBO have built really the most astounding technology platform for not only traditional content, but future content. We're tech people at FaceBank, and we're hard to impress. And I'll tell you, what they've done up at FUBO is just mind-blowing. So get ready for a ride, get ready for a name change, a symbol change, and get ready to meet David Gandler. I think you're going to love him. And I'm going to sign off for now, unless you have any questions, Jack.
Okay, John, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. So let's start off with some questions that came in last night, and then we'll go to the live questions. So first question is from Jeffrey, asking, when do you think you will uplist to a bigger exchange?
Well, you never like to predict something when you're asking their permission. So I'll tell you that what the NASDAQ says publicly in all of their listing guides is that it's a 6-week process. And you've got to qualify, whether it's the NASDAQ or the NYSE, this is obviously a very qualified company. for an uplisting, for an IPO. David and his team have been much sought after by the exchanges. I've seen some of the presentation that the exchanges have actually made to the company, and I can tell you it's very different than FaceBank trying to uplist. On our own, we show up and we have all the listing standards and we've got the qualifications, and we go through a process, and there's a certain amount of skepticism. And anytime an OTC goes up to a national exchange, FUBO doesn't get that skepticism from the exchanges. I've already seen it. They're getting pitched hard, and we expect that process is going to go fairly efficiently, although we don't want to prejudge what is the stated process, which everybody says is 6 weeks. It could be maybe a bit shorter, maybe a bit longer.
Okay. Next question is from John asking, do you anticipate a Floyd Mayweather virtual reality fight on fuboTV in the next year?
Yeah, that gets into the world of forward-looking statements. I kind of make them a lot when we're talking about where a project can go, when we're talking about dreams for content in the future. I can tell you, notwithstanding some very complimentary headlines of my pioneership in virtual reality, I'm not the biggest believer in virtual reality for that kind of an event. I mean, this is an event that 1 billion people are going to watch, or that's a crazy number. Some incredible number of people are going to want to watch this if you look at the pay-per-view history of Floyd Mayweather. And to say we're going to limit that audience and the economics from that event to the amount of people that have bought Oculus Rift, I mean, that's just dumb. And so, as much as I believe in immersive entertainment, I've been a big part of, the many people that have helped to pioneer that. Sometimes sitting down in front of a flat screen with your buddies on a couch is the way to really have an immersive experience. The immersion is with your friends in the moment, the community, the world watching that event. That's a virtual fight for a flat screen if I've ever seen one. And that's how you're going to get the biggest audience.
Okay. Next question. Okay, so we got a couple of questions from Lisa. I think you've answered them, but we'll just kind of recap. Lisa's asking, what will be the share count when the merger closes?
Yeah, again, it's I don't want to make a forward-looking number. What I gave was an estimate based on our current numbers of if you were to look at our fully diluted share count, our current issued and outstanding, with where we expect to be, because you've got to read into some of the numbers that were disclosed in the 8K in the merger agreement. Those are all public now. Our fully diluted number looks about like 35 million, give or take some. Then we have an obligation at closing, which should happen in the coming days, to issue 1 preferred share for every current FaceBank share. And those preferred shares are convertible into sub-voting. They're sub-voting. They don't vote a full share. So while we still have the majority vote, if there was a shareholder vote, their shares are convertible into 2 common shares. So you would take whatever our fully diluted number is at closing, multiply it by 2 to add to the FUBO shareholders. So the ending number is 3 times our current number. So that's why if you said it's around 105 million shares, that's a pretty good estimate.
Okay, and again, I think you did touch on this. Lisa is asking these questions, I guess, came in a little earlier in the presentation. She's asking, what are the FUBO revenues and viewership?
Yeah, so those numbers I gave you, revenues in 2019, 147 million, but achieving by the fourth quarter of 2019 a 223 million annualized. They call that a run rate. What's your pace of revenues at the end of the year? That's a strong number. If you think about enterprise value, that 105 million, shares multiplied by a recent stock price for us, $8, it's roughly 800 million in enterprise value, as compared to, the revenue run rate and what anybody could guess would be the growth going into next year. That's why we're seeing this as less than 3 times a multiple of revenues on the value of our company. with just FUBO's numbers alone. And that's before you get to the value of FaceBank technology and IP and all the other things that build up the market value. But those are some pretty good metrics, and we thought this was a really good deal. And we think FUBO is going to perform incredibly well as a public company. They certainly deserve the full attention of the capital markets, and we feel comfortable with the analysts that are already sniffing around this company that they're going to get great market support.
Okay, and Steve is asking, what is the run rate for FaceBank right now?
Well, we recently put a number in an 8K, which was gross revenues of our European subsidiary. And the reason we disclose that number is because they've been giving guidance out in the European markets. Now, we only own 62% of that company, but their numbers, because we own a majority of that company, flow up into our P&L. So the revenues we reported of a small amount in the third quarter of last year reflect the revenues of our European subsidiary. Now, I think the 8K that, please rely on the 8K for that number, but I think what we did in that at 8K is we tried to line up the market's understanding of the public number that was floating around in Europe of gross revenues for 2019 that will come into our equation of about 54 million in revenues. But keep in mind, we've got revenue recognition policies which are very different than they are in Europe, and we expect to report a much lower number than that because we see a lot of that business under American GAAP as a net revenue business. And we have not disclosed the fully audited number of net revenues that are going to be a part of the FaceBank financials in our 10K. But we're going to be giving those revenue estimates based on our revenue recognition policies here in the US within the next couple of weeks. We are going to plan that release.
Okay. Next question is from Keith, asking what is happening with the AR part of the company?
Well, there's no AR part of the company other than to say that we build digital characters that can exist in AR, VR, traditional films, television, games. And so what we're focused on is building technology to create beautiful likeness, to sign celebrity agreements, these incredible revenue shares. We have 25% of the revenue share of Floyd Mayweather if he does that fight. Well, he got $100 million, we understand, up front as a pay-per-view, commitment. So, if a character is ultimately deployed in AR or VR or in traditional content or pay-per-view, we don't really care. We align with the likeness. 25% of Mayweather, 25% of Muhammad Ali, 25% of Elvis Presley, 25% of Marilyn Monroe. 20 to 40 of Michael Jackson, 5% of ABBA. So if their creative people come to us and say, we want to do an AR thing, these are the revenues coming back to the celebrities, well, we get a revenue split. So I don't mean to say I don't care about your question. I love AR. I think it's the future of so many forms of content delivery and information, but our business model is not set up that we are dependent on what I think is a very slow adoption of AR headsets and VR goggles. We want to be aligned with the celebrity likeness for all forms of current entertainment and future form entertainment.
Okay, Lisa asking another question here. She's asking, is FUBO profitable? If not, what is the cash burn?
Those numbers have not been publicly released. Those numbers will be available relatively soon, as we have got to provide within 75 days of the closing of our acquisition an 8K that will show their historical audits. Based on the reason we felt comfortable talking about revenues, and in a very short time we'll be comfortable talking about profitability as well, is that a lot of the market that follows OTT companies already have a pretty darn good guess of what FUBO's doing, because there's a lot of coverage of that space. And we felt comfortable today talking about those limited metrics that we're also going to be making available in an 8K for people that didn't have the benefit of being on this call. But the fully audited numbers are going to be available when our 75-day 8K is available, or possibly if, because of some of our other filings as a company or our NASDAQ uplisting process, we choose to release those numbers earlier than that.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? No, I guess that's it. John, again, thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward to hearing more on the merger in the coming weeks.
Great. Well, thank you, Jack. Thank you, everybody, for listening to a long presentation, but we had a lot of information to deliver. And please go to FaceBankGroup.com, our press section. You'll see all of the coverage, on our site under fuboTV Press, that little section that we created this morning. And you can see how the world thinks about this, from Bloomberg to Forbes to the New York Times. And it's quite a tremendous amount of visibility, and that's all credit to the incredible business that David and his team have built up at FuboTV. So thank you again.
Thank you, John.